Okay. Well, we've already got a couple of viewers on there. Awesome. Hi, guys. How you doing? Waiting for everybody to show up. I can see you all coming in. Ian went to go get an antihistamine because he started sneezing when he came in here, so he figured he'd better get one now. So he's on his way back, and he got his shot yesterday. Hey, Mindy. Weird, this time and last Sunday I was nowhere near my phone and all of a sudden you popped up. All right, awesome. The last of her kind said, hello, how are you? And he Sues the Dragon says, hi, Siofra. Hi. And we're doing pretty good. We're going to have a storm coming in this afternoon as far as our weather is concerned, but Ian got his first vaccination yesterday, although the hospital's computer system apparently was having a problem, and they had to go to a paper system, so we stood in line for, I think, about an hour, even though we had an appointment. Apparently their idea of an appointment was we can get 30 people in one slot. I don't know. But anyway, so he's doing pretty good. Just a bit of a sore arm. Hi, Kendra. Good evening where you are. Julia. Hello, everyone. Hi, Julia. Mindy says, don't get me wrong. I am thankful, but it's a bit strange that it's only happened with you. Well, that's just a good thing. Right? So it's nice to be here again. And hi, Trinity. Yeah, that's what must be. It is hello. How are you doing? So glad to see so many people popping up right in the beginning. It's always a good thing. I'm trying to get through the elements as everyone requested. So I did the one on fire a couple days ago. So hopefully you've had a chance to see that. And if you have any questions about it, it's a good time to ask. Julie says, I wasn't here last time, so I assume you talked about it, but how was your Ostara? It was low-key. It was just the two of us. I cooked a big meal. We had a 20-pound turkey that I found in January in the store, so I cooked it. We are getting ready to freeze the rest of the turkey, I think, at this point, because we've been eating it all week. Catherine Leslie Faye says, hello. Hi, Catherine. Mindy says, I look forward to these every Sunday. Maybe my energy is causing this to happen. Thank you, Siofra, for these lives on Sundays. You're welcome. Yeah, it's something that we're beginning to look forward to as well, because we never know what kind of conversations we're going to have, and it keeps life interesting, especially when we're sort of isolated still with all the pandemic stuff. So hopefully wherever you are safe. Violet says, hello, on time, so I guess after calming down, I want to know if I am having a magical attack, will it dissipate on its own? We already determined I have no attachment. Okay, so when it comes to magical attacks, changing your view and your energy and your focus is your best defense, because the attacks happen when you're feeling weakened and vulnerable. Regardless of where they're coming from, whether they're coming from a group of beings that you are attracting to yourself, or whether they're coming from a person. Your best defense is always shoring up yourself and making yourself strong and getting the positive energy in your environment, because negative beings really don't like being around positive things. And to practice the idea of authority, your a natural authority that you have over anything that is not physical. So you really need to do a good couple of meditations on that subject and consider the reality of the fact that you are in a body. It's your body, it's your space, it's your house, it's your environment, and you are in charge of it. And you have to claim the authority to be in charge of all of those things around you. And so if by some circumstance you do end up with some kind of an attack, then tell them go away because they're not allowed to be there. You really have to watch out for, all of us have a tendency for confirmation bias and looking for things to fit into whatever scenario it is that we have that's in our heads. And so you have to change the scenario. You got to change that dialogue that you're having with the universe and do things to strengthen yourself. So working on yourself is not a matter, it's not so much what you're doing, like whether you're doing invocations, evocations, or magic. It's about that sense inside of you where you don't have any question or doubt about your ability to be in control and be in charge. It's sort of hard to explain.
One of the things that helps that is just experience.
Well, right. But this is trying to get someone from that to an experience. So you just have to keep working on that. Working on your environment, working on making positive energy and stuff in there. Sage only works to get rid of negative energy. It doesn't work to bring up and bring in positive stuff. It's one of the misunderstandings that a lot of pagans have about how to use sage or other types of incense that are supposed to get rid of negative stuff. If you're cleansing your space and getting rid of negative energy, you've got to go another step and make sure you bring positive energy into your environment and fill it up. Because if it isn't filled up with something, then it's just sitting there waiting for something to come in. So it's your job to fill it with what you want, whether that's music or baking or singing or drumming or whatever activity it is that brings you up and makes you feel, more you. That's what you do to fill it up. So Mindy says, hello and thank you, Ian. Hope I spelled his name correctly. Yes, that is how we are spelling his name. Or how he is spelling his name. Julia says, sounds great. It was my first Sabbath and I had lots of fun on my own with nature. Yes, it's nice. I'm enjoying the spring. I actually got out and did a little bit of weeding in my garden. Not very long, just an hour worth, but I got started on one little section. Canary says, hello, everyone. Hi, Canary. Ryder says, hello, happy full moon, storm moon to all. Good to be here. Yes, it is a full moon. It's quite wonderful energy this month. I had a weird experience. I forgot to tell you about this, actually. A couple of nights ago, I found myself wandering around in this sort of gray fog kind of thing. I was very aware of the fact that I was there and everything was just this, the gray was kind of like moving gray billows, sort of had texture to it, so it wasn't just blank. And I was trying to figure out what was going on and where I was, and I realized that I was in that space where the earthbound spirits get stuck. And that's what they see. And I was like, well, no wonder they have a hard time finding their way out of this, because it was like featureless and nothing there. It was sort of odd. I blame the full moon. Why not? So, Ryder and Mindy are saying hello to each other. And Ari says, if I get a Moldavite, will it matter much if it's a tiny, tiny, tiny piece? I'm trying to stay on budget. I don't think it matters the energy that it's connected to. It doesn't matter the size of the piece. I don't know much about Moldavite and why people are suddenly thinking it's so vital and important. I have lots and lots of rocks that I work with, and but size doesn't really matter. And smaller pieces you can do things with. You can put them in little spots and stuff like that.
As long as it's not so small you have trouble doing visualizations with that type of thing.
Yeah.
As long as you don't feel that it's too small.
Okay, like say for example, all right, so this is my lunar wand. Since the full moon is coming, I decided I ought to show it off again today. And inside of this wand is a silver tube that is filled with moonstone chips. So I used smaller versions of the stone when I made it. And so I have the bigger moonstones, of course, on the outside of it. And then we couldn't get a hole without cracking it big enough for the whole thing to go in. So I decorated the external part of the tube with other moonstones and then topped it all off to hold it all in. But yeah. Violet says, thanks for the feedback. I just sat there and listened to this little demon, and since he didn't grab me, I just listened until it disappeared. I wasn't feeling particularly weak this day. Well, that's good. Moldavite is generally very small anyway. Probably because they want to have so much money for it. I don't know. Mindy says, working on my horse's hooves today. I'm listening and checking my phone here and there. Mindy says, question. And then nothing. So, all right, so we'll wait for Mindy's question. And I wanted to give you an update on my project. I've been working on Bridget. So I brought her along to show her off. Oh, wait a minute. Ryder says, it's fitting being the storm moon. Went to a full moon magic candle party, finished just now, and nearly everyone present was experiencing stormy, windy weather, just raining where I am. Mindy says, question, is there a certain way or ways that are better to use when integrating soul fragments? I don't know. Because, that there is a whole idea about that you lose different pieces of you. When I was younger, I felt like I had, every time I thought about something, I'd sent a part of me out in order to try and get information about it, and every so often that part would come back with the information. I don't think that's quite the same thing.
Well, in my opinion, it's basically losing parts of your astral self, so to speak, that you can cover.
But I'm not sure about what forms of integration might be better than other forms. Yeah, so I really don't have too much view on that. So Julia says, so a bit ago I started reading about witchcraft, especially about Diana. I'd gotten a few signs, and while it made me excited, I ended up feeling a little afraid. So I stepped away from, and when I returned to it, I haven't received any similar signs. Am I not wanted, or have I offended Diana or other deities? Okay, so deities really don't get up in arms about this sort of thing. It's not one of the things that they're concerned about. If you're meant to, or if Diana or Artemis or one of the other lunar deities is interested in you, it'll come back around. So the thing to do is just work on yourself. And that's really the core of all of it. Work on your relationship to the lunar cycle, to the moon, and then wait and see what happens. You can read mythology about her. You can find poems that have been written in the past. Homer has a lot of really nice poems to different deities and stuff like that. Some of the Homeric poems are really good for giving a base to get started on doing something, and just connect with it. But I guess the question is, what was it about the whole idea that you were afraid of? Would be a thing. Mary says, anyone on chat had any Moldavite experience? Selena Moonstone says, hello, new viewer. Hi, Selena. Ryder says at Canary, it's one I've not used as yet. I may get a piece. Yeah, so here is Bridget. Let me get this up here before another question comes in and I get myself distracted again. I have to sort of wait for this to pop in here so I can see what it looks like. Okay, we need to get it closer.
Closer?
I think this should do it when I see it move, since there's always a bit of a delay from our end. Yeah. So I've started getting the sky in and stuff. I'll have to take a picture of her and put her up on our site so you can see it more better. Well, I guess I did that. But it's been interesting to, do that. I like beading. It's one of the things that I enjoy doing. So Writer says, that's coming along really well. I'm loving her red hair. Yes, I imagine that she has red hair. Just seems correct somehow. And I think I've seen pictures of her with red hair. So, thank you. And adding the blue sky sort of giving me an idea of the blue and the green combination and stuff like that. It's actually beading rather than embroidery. These are size 15 seed beads, and I sew them on 2 at a time. So, yeah, it would make a nice embroidery piece too, but that's not what I'm doing. Canary says, at Ryder, I've always been curious but never found any affordable, talking about the Moldavite. But like the price I have my eye on is only the size of my fingernail. I want to see if it's as powerful as people are saying. Last of her kind says, it's so pretty. It is pretty. I like it. So Julia says, I suppose the fear stemmed from surprise of genuine signs and not wanting to go down the wrong path.
I had a whole bunch of that when I was starting out, where I'd run into something, and it was basically, mine was old things from upbringing that were in there that were basically Christian based in my case. It would cause the fears and stuff to come up until I eventually stopped being afraid of it.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to that whole process of looking at and figuring out what our biases are and what programming that we've been given that's stuck in our subconscious from the time we were little that we aren't in control of in the beginning. And so definitely. So she also said, I'm overcoming that fear and will take your advice. Thank you so much. You're welcome. So Selena Moonstone says, this is the first time I've been able to catch a live video, and I find it interesting I came into a convo about deities. I'm on my own journey, and my question is, can Jesus be my deity? Well, you can probably make him your deity if you want to. I don't see any reason why not. He certainly is a deity for a lot of Christians out there.
Just depends on how much in tune you are. If you're in tune with that, then sure.
Yep. Catherine Leslie Fay says, my mistake, I used beads in my embroidery. Oh. Well, these are just all beads. So, Julia says, that's exactly my case. Wow. So, talking about the stuff. Canary says, at Selena, yes, he's good one to work with and one of the most willing to work with people. He's just not as he is portrayed. Violet says, do attacks dissipate on their own? I've had 7 years of weirdly unusual bad luck that makes me wonder if one witch willed me to lose it all. I have seen insidious attacks like this in books.
In general, they definitely wear off after a time, unless the person keeps repeating it over and over and over again, that things will gradually lose energy if it's a regular charge, and not something like sending a being after you or something.
Well, right, and if you can reflect the energy back to wherever it came from, then it'll like whack the person who sent it to you. So they'll get like a consequence for being mean. I mean, if it's not a real self-defense kind of thing, then, you know. So Jonathan has joined us, and he says, hi, Siofra, I've just started using the Seals of Solomon. Have you used them? No, I don't use the Seals of Solomon because that is... generally speaking, working with what they consider demonic beings, and there are so many beings out there to choose from that I choose not to work with them in particular.
We prefer Barden's hierarchy for beings because they're all known to be positive.
Right. So, you know, it's not that they're not effective, but it's just not my cup of tea. Writer says, yeah, I know a few people who have not adopted the Christian belief and concept but can relate to Jesus as a very interactive energy. Nisha Wisha says, hello, Siofra and Ian. Just wanted to say thank you for your authenticity and generosity and all you share with us. Bright blessings from Portland. Well, you must be on a break. And hi to you, too. I hope you're having a great day. And is it stormy up there? It's definitely getting stormy down here a little bit. We're going to get it in. Violet says, I have the Barden books. Yes, and we were responding to the Seal of Solomon question about that. And the book of evocations that he has is the most comprehensive list of spirit beings and their job description, what they rule, what they're in charge of, what their tendencies are, whether you can interact with them safely and not be making some kind of a pact with them and owe them a favor, and then their seals that go along with them. So
Yeah, if I'm going to work with a hierarchy, I much prefer that hierarchy.
Nisha says, yes, it's stormy up in Portland. And of course, Violet is up in Portland as well. So we have two people near Portland at any rate. And then other people around the planet, which is awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so whatever being that you're working with, knowing as much as you can about them is good. The deities are different than the other beings. I mean, deities are sort of a different class of spirit.
They're almost more abstract, you know.
Or more real, depending. And they can be a lot more direct, certainly with me. The ones, when I've met them, they've been incredibly vivid and in my face and just who they are. And they always tell you who they are. At least so far they've told me. So Violet says, all calm here so far, a tiny bit of wind. Catherine Leslie Fay says, I'm in Portland, no work today because of the storm energies. Hey, is that Portland, Oregon or Portland, Maine? I should ask, since there's more than one Portland. The Last of Her Kind says, stormy in Ireland too. All right, the whole planet's just having a storm right now. That's the way it is, right? There's no place that's actually clear. No, I'm sure there's some that are clear, since it's an entire planet. But, yeah, I was reading an article the other day. I talked briefly last time about St. Patrick and what he did to Lou and turning him into a leprechaun. But the article also talked about him making the mermaids when he threw the Irish women who were the priestesses and stuff like that into the sea, or drove them into the sea, and then they were transformed into mermaids, which I thought was kind of interesting, because I had not heard that particular source for mermaid lore before. And it makes me think about that place in Ireland that's got Mermaid Cave, and whether that relates to St. Patrick's story or not. Be a good question. Julia says, yes, Catherine says Portland, Oregon. All right. Julia says it's going to be stormy later in New Jersey, too. Yes, I saw the weather report and things are moving towards the east. Violet says, I journal on Facebook every morning. If someone on Facebook is creepy, wishing me ill will, and I don't know it, can they hurt me just because I journal? Well, I don't think so, but that depends on how you feel about people and how they feel about what you're journaling. I mean, if you have the idea that if someone reads your words and doesn't appreciate them, then that can be sending you negative energy and interfering with what you're doing, then the answer would be yes. If the answer is yes, then you need to do something about changing the way you're thinking about things. Because that's how bullying works, not just magic, but any kind of form of bullying. One of the problems we have, I think, as a society in general, as human beings as a whole, is looking outside of ourselves for validation from other people. And so if we feel that we only have worth in relationship to how other people think about us, then our well-being is dependent upon getting that kind of positive feedback. And part of the journey is to get to the point where you know who you are, what you're worth, and what other people think about you isn't as important, which is why I interact with the universe. And if the trees and the stones are upset with me, then I need to figure out why. What have I done? Because their opinion matters more to me than the people. You have to sort of, if you're going to steer your course, you have to consciously steer that course. You need to look at these things. One of the reasons therapy can help is because it can help to uncover some of those tendencies and wounds that we have from the past. And when we come from a history of being severely abused, our self-confidence and our sense of self-worth is dramatically damaged. and learning how to heal from that and how to become complete and whole in ourselves is a journey. It doesn't happen all at once. It's small steps. And I can remember how it felt. I mean, when I lived in Saskatchewan, I remember any number of times where I felt like I was in the middle of a black hole somewhere and there was no way out. I couldn't really see any light at the end of any tunnel. And so it's not easy. And the spirits definitely have helped me. That's when the trees reached out to me to give me an assist and help to shore up my sense of being, I guess, by recognizing what was going on with me. And that started a journey through into all of this. But it doesn't, like I said, happen all at once. There were a lot of different stages and steps along the way. One of the things I really recognized for myself was that my spiritual development had continued, my physical development had continued, but my emotional development had stopped, basically at the age of 6 when I first started being abused. And learning that it was okay to make mistakes, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay not to agree with other people, it's okay to apologize if you feel that you've done something wrong. These are hard-learned lessons for a lot of us, because the idea of not being perfect is sort of feels like jumping into chaos, that you are losing control when in fact it's the opposite. It's like you're allowing yourself to have more control over you and more ability to shape who you are as you go forward when you're trying to develop as a person, whether magic is the path you use to get there or not. And I think that ritual and magic has a missing piece for helping us to recover. We had a guy over here we're looking at a grant to get our roof replaced. And it turned out that he was, as he said, a Wiccan minister, although his energy was quite aggressive, to say the least. And when he came over here, he said a few things that were sort of noticeable to me. I told him that I was healed from the trauma from my childhood, and he declared he didn't think that that was possible, which makes it not possible for him. So looking at those things, those statements that we're making about what we can and cannot do, some of them we may not want to do, but we can't make a choice unless we know that we have those deeply rooted things. It's complicated. There's no doubt about it. So Philippa says, just tuned in and you've just answered a question that has been on my mind for some time about Jesus being a deity. Thank you. Blessings from England. You're welcome. Canary had to go. I missed saying goodbye because I was busy answering another question. And Catherine says, blessings, Canary. Violet says, I did do therapy. It was very costly and I had to give up. I feel I worked through most of it. Hopefully anyway, it seems all I can do and just try to enjoy moments now. Well, working with the moon, the dark of the moon is a good time to look at those things. The full moon is a good time to embrace and let go of, embrace those things. We're all on a somewhat different journey, and it's not a straight path for anyone when it comes to it. And there are self-help books that can help, but I think ritual is actually the missing key. That's what I used a lot. And then when I was going into therapy, I was ready to integrate a lot of that kind of stuff because it was sort of all together at once. So anyway. What do we want to talk about now? I've run out of questions. I don't know what to do. Jonathan says at Violet, it's amazing what you can find yourself capable of. Yes. And enjoying the now is probably the most important thing that you can do anyway. It's being in your life. That's what, when they're talking about mindfulness, they're talking about not being in the past, not being in the future, but being in the moment as much as you can. The writer says, I enjoyed the video you did on the element of fire. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That was kind of fun. Catherine says, anything on dealing with wild storm energies would be nice. And Philippa says, lesser banishing ritual, please. Actually, that's already up there. One of the earlier videos as a meditational practice.
Yeah, but not the lesser banishing itself.
Well, right.
I turned it into as a meditation.
Right. Ian turned it into a meditation at my request. It's not the actual full-on lesser banishing ritual, but you can find that.
I know we're familiar with it.
Yeah. Violet says, I will be watching the element after this. Nisha says, Atlantis. Can you talk to us about your what you remember? Okay. Well, let's see. I remember leaving Atlantis at the end and arriving in Egypt with a bunch of stuff like information, knowledge, and that Egypt was green. The Nile, it was like a jungle, which I kind of was surprised at when I remembered that, because, and then later found out that at some point it was actually green there, and weather patterns had changed and turned it into a desert. Edgar Cayce has a lot of things that he says about Atlantis, and the few things that I remember directly, I met someone who was there with me once, and when I was younger, and I can't remember exactly how it happened, but he touched the back of my chair, and all of a sudden I found myself back in Atlantis, doing things actually with storm energy, come to think of it, lightning in particular, and doing stuff. But the main thing is airplanes are wrong. They're so wrong. They shouldn't feel like they're falling out of the sky, and yet they do. That's one of the things when I got on a plane. I was like, this is wrong. So I think there was lighter than air technology at the time. But I haven't really thought about it much in the last while. And since it's something that's so far in the past, and, it's like, I believe it's there. I went to an archaeologist, not a conference, but a presentation. A bunch of archaeologists had gotten together and actually were using the Edgar Cayce readings to try and find Atlantean artifacts based on what he said. And there were a bunch of them that they had found, including a building in South America that was described by him in one of his readings that was sort of like a beehive kind of shape. And apparently it was set up with a laser, and it had these poles around in a circle around it outside, and they actually found this structure with holes for the poles in them. And the statue that they found in South America that was made out of platinum, melted, cast platinum, which uses a huge amount of heat in order to make it happen, and was of a Babylonian half-fish god, which they thought was pretty fascinating. So there's certainly a lot of interesting things that have been discovered around the world. But, yeah. So, Philippa said thanks. Jason Pra says hello. Hello, Jason Pra. Jonathan says, question, I want to work with Aphrodite. Can you tell me about her? Yes, Aphrodite was my first goddess after Mary, I guess, when I was little. I don't know why I connected with Mary in the beginning, because I was not Catholic, but I always had like prayers to Mary that I was doing constantly. And then when I was in the 4th grade, they had our class had a class on Greek mythology, which was really mind-boggling. And I adopted Aphrodite, and I've had statues of her my entire life. It depends on which aspect of Aphrodite that you're connecting to. Aphrodite is definitely a love goddess, but she's also got other powers to her than just that. And acceptance and beauty are definitely part of her energy. Emeralds, she likes those. She likes greens. Um, there's some probably great poetry to her, which would be good to learn. That you can say, like I have for Aurora, that I do in the mornings. Make a shrine to her. It people used to pray to her for relationship love, but it isn't just about that. It can be about self love and non-sexual love as well. They kind of diminished a lot of the goddesses when the gods came to the foreground. So depending on which aspect, like I said, that you look at. So she's related to some of the other great goddesses like Ishtar and Isis and Inanna and Aphrodite are all kind of, a lot of those words all meant the same thing in their language, like, goddess of heaven or something of that nature. It's going to depend upon her. Writer says goodbye to Mary because she was out of the room. Writer says, do you have items that seem to have a mind of their own, like they refuse to be put in another room and have to have a certain spot that theirs, or they don't like other people touching? Yes. I was talking about this the other day. I have a lot of items that are like that. They are very picky about where they go. We have a garden statue that I picked up that I painted that's been in our west corner for a while. She's like a fountain, like a bird bath kind of thing. And she's quite tall. And one year we decided we moved her to the other side of our temple for Bridget's Day in February, and she didn't like it there. she didn't like being moved from one corner of the room to the other. And I came in, and it was very evident that something was not right, and we had to pick her up and move her back. I have jewelry that will only let me wear it a certain way. My dragon bracelet will only wear it, will only sit on my right wrist facing me, for example. So, yeah. And when you're like putting things on your altar or decorating your house or what have you, there's energetic connections between all those objects, and some of them, they get discordant and they don't like where they are, and they let you know if you're paying attention to the energy of what's going on. And my staff has a mind of its own, and it decides what it wants to do. So Jonathan says, love. I don't care for her war aspect. I wrote a sonnet for her. Well, that's a nice thing to write for a love goddess, is a sonnet. Desideradum says, I wonder if Mary predates Christianity by more than 9 months. As in she existed as a sentient entity with the same characteristics. Well, she was the original, one of the original versions of the Virgin Goddess and of the Triple Goddess, and the only one that stayed, kind of thing. It's like it just made so little sense to have no female energy at all that they had to keep her, I think. Julia said, you said before that deities aren't too worried about their followers having a moment of fear, but if I promise a deity, for example, to pray in the morning and then I forget, is that held against me? Well, you probably hold it against yourself because you're trying to build up an energy, and keeping your word about things, magically speaking, is definitely an important aspect of practice. But you can position it differently. You can say, I want to say this every morning. I'm going to try and say this every morning. And if you forget in the morning, okay. If you forget in the morning, you can say it later in the day and just say, I'm working on developing this practice. And so, again, it's how you put it out there, how you mentally arrange your brain and expectations of what's going to do, because you can create your own consequences with that. But certainly the universe can tell whether you're a person of your word and whether you're ethical or not. And so think about that when you're making promises. Sorry, Julia says, sorry, I guess I get a little nervous about accidentally seeming disrespectful to a deity. Yeah, well, Being reverent is a good thing, not a bad thing. Doramifra says, hello, sorry I'm late, but happy to be here. Hi, glad to see you. Writer says that Jonathan has, that's so sweet. I would love someone to write me a sonnet. The best I got was payment is due. That's not much of a sonnet. Writer says, hi to Doramifra. Georgia Rhine says, when you meet new people or go out in public, can you tell if someone has something psychic or mystic about them in their nature? Sometimes I'm able to tell that, and other people can sometimes tell that of me. If I go see someone who's supposedly a psychic and they don't pick up on the fact that I am as well, and that, I'm a healer and all these other things I do, then I'm not very impressed with their psychic ability. But yeah, if you're paying attention, energy is very important when it comes to that. But most of the time when I go shopping, I'm trying to stay focused on getting in and getting out and not interacting with people at this point. But pre-pandemic, I would often have people come up and start telling me their life story because I'm an empath, and that's what happens to empaths. You learn more about what's going on in people's heads than you ever imagined was likely or possible, especially in a 5-minute block when they just shook. It just all comes out at once. But there have been a few times I've encountered people out in public and made a connection with them. Sometimes they follow through on that. It's a funny thing. I met a woman once on a bus in Santa Cruz, and there was something about her energy I really liked, and I wanted to, get to know her better. And I talked to her for a while, and I said we should exchange numbers or something, and she's like, we will meet again. Don't worry. And I thought, no, we won't. And no, we didn't. So, yeah. So, things come, they go, whatever. But, yeah, taking down that invisibility shield has made more of the sensitive people in the area notice me. And when people who are sensitive come to my office, they really notice the energetic stuff that I've done in my office. I had one client, she's extremely sensitive to the energy, and once she's in my office, it's wonderful, but then she's not sure how to get out of my office. Like going from under my threshold out into the hall is like going from one planet to another, and it confuses the heck out of her. And I always have to tell her which way to turn when she steps out of the threshold because it's now a different place. And we've experienced that before, like the ashram up in Portland, the stuff that they've done on the property. When you walk through the gate, there's a total shift of energy when you walk across their threshold. And there was one business in a mall I think in Eugene or Springfield, I never remember which mall, that had magical stuff. They put in a wooden lintel in their facility, and as soon as I stepped under the lintel, I could feel the shift in energy, so I knew what they had done, that they had created a magical environment inside. And that's where I actually got my scrying mirror that's behind me. And then they were gone, and so was the threshold. So they took it down when they left. Not the lintel. The lintel, I think, was still there, but the energetic part of it was gone. And I've had people say the same thing about our house and our yard. We have a fence in the front now, and sensitive people, when they come onto the property, will feel a shift in energy because of the years of working. Actually, when that guy was here, he was looking through all of the rooms in our house, because apparently we had to have a HUD inspection, which we didn't know about. And he came in here. He didn't come into this room, but he came into the garage, and he went to open this door, and I just said, don't go in that room, it's private. And he stopped, which is nice, because he actually listened, and he didn't go in. And I was proud of myself that I stopped him, because this is our private, personal, sacred space in here. And we just don't want anyone just to wander in, not just because it's private, but because it's so highly charged and energetic that it can also be disruptive to people who aren't prepared for it. And yeah, don't need that kind of stuff. And then I had to clear my house that night. He left a whole bunch of thought forms behind. He was kind of an angry person, complained about everything all the time. So, Julia says, I see, I'll keep it in mind. Thank you. You're welcome. Jonathan says that, Ryder, you are a cornerstone of this channel. I will write you a sonnet. You deserve it. Oh, that's sweet. Oh, a sonnet from Jonathan. Nice. So, Eleni says, how can you protect your energy from other people? Most of the times, I feel like it's too draining for me because my energy collides too much with the energy of others around me. That would be some of the stuff we've put up in the beginning. Learning how to create energetic boundaries, creating a shield around yourself, grounding yourself, using jewelry that you've charged up for the purpose, especially when you're going out in public. I've got my black tourmaline, my chalcedony bracelet right now, amethyst, cryopraise, I think is that one, and then some sort of yellow jasper. I've got some black spinel. I have, different jewelry that I wear. I've got my tiger eye here, which is charged to reflect other people's energy away from me and keep my energy in. It's very traditional for protection against the evil eye. So, it doesn't have to be something obvious to anyone else. It can be something you put in your pocket. You can charge up a stone and put it in your pocket. I recommend the healing chant and the tree meditation. The tree meditation goes through the whole process of learning how to center, ground, shield, and energize and align your chakras and clear them out and so forth. And it's a practice. And then if you feel like someone's energy is still stuck to you when you get home, putting your hands in water and visualizing the water taking the energy out of your hands. If it's really bad, you can put your hands and feet in water, and any energy that doesn't belong to you will immediately be grounded out. We use that as an emergency thing. I don't know if I've talked about this or not, but when Ian and I first met, the first month or so, my mother was coming to visit, and we were going to go for a trip down to Santa Cruz, so it was kind of odd timing. And when my mother came one morning, all of a sudden this spinning cube inside a sphere came flying through the air and smacked me in my third eye, which woke me up. I was very startled by that. And I told Ian what was going on, and he's like, why do you get one of those? That's a ceremonial magician kind of symbol. And I'm like, I don't know. It just came out of the air and smacked me in the head. What can I say? And I was very sensitive that day, and we took my mother to the park down in Ashland, and they had the outdoor vendors and stuff there. And I picked up a crystal wand that looked absolutely gorgeous. I picked it up, and the only thing I can say is it bit me. I was very aware of this dark energy in this object, and I managed to put it down without throwing it or dropping it. I was very proud of myself for my constraint. The owner or the maker of the wands wasn't there at his booth at the time, but it's like I could see this black energy coursing up my hand and climbing up my arm, and I'm like, I need to get this out of me now. I don't know what this is, but this is not good. I told Ian about it, so he picked it up and he got it too. And it's like, what did you do that for? So then I could see it climbing up his arm, and I went and jumped in the fountain, took off my shoes, jumped in the fountain, put my hands in the water, and it just drained straight out. And then Ian had to go into the creek because he didn't feel comfortable going into the fountain because he has more of a concern about what other people think, which is, funny. Especially with me around, because I'm not. But it works. I know, it was a immediate first aid thing that we needed to do, and it works. And there was a healer in Saskatchewan years ago who told me about it. He was an herbalist and stuff like that, and he just gave me this little nugget that just stuck around in the back of my head, and one day I needed it and pulled it out and used it, and there it was. It worked. So minimize the amount of time you spend in the store. Try and make sure that you're shielding yourself up when you go in, and try and stay focused on what your task at hand is, and try to avoid eye contact with other people so they don't see it as an invitation to come in, like, dump all over you because you might be an empath. So, let's see. Jason Pro says, what is the evil eye? Alina says, thank you so much. You're welcome. Violet says, I had 2 separate people gift me an evil eye before I understood what it was. What are they thinking when they gift that? I felt afterward how unwarranted it was. Okay, so yes, Jonathan is correct. The evil eye that I'm talking about is a curse from someone else. And it does usually come from jealousy of some kind. The evil eye, I think that Violet is talking about, is this talisman that you can buy that is like an eye. So Violet can tell us if that's correct. And that's supposed to protect you from the evil eye. So that's not a bad gift for someone to give to you. I prefer this to an actual thing that looks like an eyeball, the tiger eye. So Desideratum says, I'm going to be sowing flower seeds today. Do you have any recommendations as to how I can attract flower fae to help me grow the plants, maybe even inhabit them? Yeah, I know, autocorrect, but I knew what you meant. Well, I mean, as you plant them, just say to the earth, I'm planting these. I would really like it if some flower fae would come and inhabit these. Put some little things around the flower bed, shiny objects. They like shiny things, like ravens and crows and me. Someone had one of those things. What 3 things would they use to conjure you or evoke you or whatever? And I said, glitter, wings, and coffee. So I respond to sparkly things, just like crows. Jonathan says, I wear an evil eye bead to protect me from receiving it, and, whoops, come back here, much more importantly, from accidentally sending it. Yes, Ryder says, I love gardening. Happy sowing, planting. It's so therapeutic. Violet says, I have so many different objects, dolls, wands, etc., made from different people. Maybe I have dolls hurting me still if you see black stuff run up your arm. Correct. Well, if you think that they are, if you have something that's made, a magical item made by somebody else, you want to make sure it's someone you trust and that they're making it for the purpose that you want it. If you're not sure, you can banish any of their energy that might be in it from it and then charge it up yourself. So that would be your best course of action if you're worried about some of them. Ryder says, little blue thingy, very popular in Greece. Saw them everywhere when I went out there. Little blue thingy. Can you elaborate? What little blue thingy are you talking about? Is that an evil eye protection talisman? Apparently they didn't like your use of that word, so it made me have to decide it was okay. Violet says, one of my pyrite skulls returned to me might have been programmed negatively in some way, for all I know. I just cannot tell. I am unable to see the black guck you can see. Well, cleanse it. Charity says, hello. Hello, Charity. Jonathan says, the fae that gave me a blue tiger eye stole it back. Well, you can ask for them to give it back to you and see if they give it back. Hi, Charity. How are you this evening, Ryder says. Julia says, I have lots of evil eye protections as a child. Many were bracelets. I'm Greek, so my family gave me some. All right. Ryder says, little blue thing, talisman, evil eye. Okay. I've not seen one personally, so I just know that I use this. Yes, blue thingy is evil eye. We're all right. We're all good on this. Little blue thingy is the evil eye bead. All right. I don't have one, but that's okay. Everyone else does. Desideratum says, thank you, Ryder. I am planting forget-me-nots, daisies, mint, and strawberries. Ooh, yes, they're going to like those. They especially like the mint and the strawberries. Those are really particularly good. Jaleesa says, hi Siofra, hope you're doing well. I am doing fantastic. Violet says, I had not thought of cleansing it at all. I can sage it all. There is so much of it, little hoarder in my tiny home. Well, you can take one out at a time, and you don't have to do them all at once. Or you can do them as a group. And you can use the evoking pentagrams to do the cleansing. So it's easy to do them as a group that way. You just do the invoking pentagram and, push it through. You don't want to do the banishing pentagram because doing a banishing pentagram on an object, the idea is you're getting rid of the element, and you don't want to unmake it, although I don't think you could succeed. Still, it probably wouldn't care for that. But you use the evoking pentagram and then visualize the energy of the element going through the object and taking any negative energy that might be in there away. So you don't have to do them one at a time. You can do them as a group if you want. And then recharge them up the way you want. So Jason Pra says, when making a magical item like talismans, is the symbolism important? Yes. It has to say something both to you and then something to whatever it is you're making it for. I mean, finding something that's associated already with a specific type of energy and then charging it up like that makes it a lot easier to connect to it. You can make anything work, but it's simpler if you find something that is already inclined in that direction, if that makes sense. But it has to work for your brain. Ryder says, that's what I was saying, very popular out in Greece, yes. Violet says, have you heard of Keys of Ocat? Not I. And Ian left the room, and he said he was coming back, but he hasn't come back yet, so we have lost his source at the moment. He may know something about that. Does the Doratum Evil Eye beads need to be cleaned after every time you wear it outside? Learning more and more about them. My tiger eye doesn't have to be cleaned at all, which is kind of nice. Jonathan says, how do I command the Fae to give it back? Well, you don't command the Fae to give it back. You request that they give it back. You implore them. You entreating them. You offer them something in exchange. You give them another crystal, or you can say, hey, I really would like that one back. I really need it a lot. Can you please give it back to me? And you can have this instead in exchange. So we'll give you an offering. The Fae do not get commanded. They're not like other spirit beings. They're kind of like a category of, it's kind of like trying to command a bear or a cat. I mean, it's, yeah. Let's see. The little blue thingy. Do you have any tips for connecting deeper with past lives? Well, you certainly can do the, a past life regression, but it's fraught with potential hazards. If you haven't remembered a past life on your own, you don't necessarily want to force a memory to come up unless there's an overriding reason, like you need to know why a relationship is not working in the present. I did that when I had problems with my son. I knew there was something that didn't fit from our current situation. I was overreacting, extremely so in certain circumstances, and I did a past life regression about that in order to find out the reason, and I did find the reason, and that helped me to get through it and stop doing what I was doing. But the most important thing is living the life you're in right now. So that's the way it works. Violet says, I invoked that one day to my dismay. Keys of Ocat Anubis entrance. I was knocked flat for a whole day. I wondered if 3 months later a demon would show itself. Was that the whole point of the invocation, was to bring a demon? I mean, if so, don't do that. Don't go looking for them. There's plenty of other nicer spirits out there. Adeline says, I'm late. I'm sorry. Could be because of our time change over here. Violet says, I cannot for the life of me understand where it comes from. Yep. Jaleesa says the evil eye is also popular in Hispanic culture. It's a tradition to have babies wear them. That would make sense. Adeline, hey, how are you? Says Ryder. Mindy says, Siofra, what are your plans, traditions for Earth Day? It's just another day that you're being aware of the planet, so it's like every other day. I always try to be a good Earth person. So no, I don't have any plans. Not this year, anyway. Let's see. Jason Pra says, if you try to command an entity, they may not like that very much. Well, there's that, too. Depends on what you're working with. Some of them, you can just tell them to go away and leave you alone and, set boundaries. Boom, there you go. Boundaries are yours to set, and you're okay with that. But Violet says, it's like, what the heck is the point of a demon revealing itself when you have no idea where it comes from? What's the point of dealing with demons in the first place? And my question. But I don't have any need to deal with them, so I don't. Ryder says, I don't think most people like being told what to do, let alone being commanded. Well, yeah, that's the first thing I noticed with the ceremonial stuff in the old grimoires and things. It's like there was all this, you're going to do this for me or else I'm going to punish you, send you to hell, you're going to be tormented for all of eternity. And big surprise when they're looking for a loophole to smack you back because you're being mean. I don't know why they didn't get that. It might be a male commanding thing or whatever, because they were mostly all men, being in charge and thinking that they can decide everybody's fate. But I don't know. It just never made sense to me as a person. Marisol says, do you know any protection chants? Well, I have a protection chant that was given to us by the Garuda, but I can't share that one, unfortunately, because that's just for us. But yeah, you can find them, Antonio says, Antonio Lopez, hi, Antonio. Can you indirectly work with the Fae? Like, I love the Fae, and I believe when I was younger, and even now I feel a deep connection and awareness, but I'm scared and aware of the danger. So is there a way? Okay, so this brings up the point that comes up in just about every show that we do about people being afraid of the Fae. There's nothing wrong with being respectful of them, but I was thinking this morning, or yesterday, I think it was this morning anyway, I realized that the stories about them have no more validity than the stories about witches during the burning times. I mean, if we believed all the stuff that was written about witches, who would ever want to be a witch? I mean, we've got an extra nipple in order to have familiars suck on us. We've got a pact with the devil. We kill babies and render their fat to make flying ointment. I mean, there is so much misinformation out there about our group of people and pagans in general. I'm not sure why we get stuck on this idea of thinking that because there's these old stories that started in the church mostly to convince the pagans to stop doing what they were doing and to separate the people and suck them up into Catholicism at the time. That's what we're making our choices and our decisions based upon. So it's like anything that exists out there in reality. The more you can understand and approach them respectfully, the more you can probably get out of the relationship. And I've never had them do me any harm. And I have them around all the time. In fact, I was taking my bath this morning and was looking at my aura in the tub. And the aura coming off my feet was huge. It was this big, huge bubble thing. And there were little things that were like playing with the energy at the edge of my energy field. So while you were out, we had a question that we thought you might know the answer to. I'm not sure. Let me go back up here. It was from Violet. The Keys of Ocat. Have you heard of the Keys of Ocat?
No, not familiar with that.
Okay, so he isn't either. He did them, and a demon was supposed to show itself later, and she wondered why that was the case. So we've been talking about that. Okay, so neither one of us knows anything about that. So Violet says the magic path is riddled lack of clarity in some ways. Hence the demon, no clue. Is it from the woman I am talking, I asked myself no on demon invoking. Well, I agree, no on demon invoking. It's like, I just say, there's other fish in the sea. Not all of them are barracudas and sharks. You can get a goldfish or something. Something easy to play with. You don't have to go for, like, the most dangerous thing out there potentially. So Alan says, do you have any recommendations for what I should do for the full moon tonight, like spells or anything? Depends on where you're at and what you're doing. I mean, where you're at in your practice.
Think of lunar stuff as rhythmic, as an example. So, like tambourine.
Well, right. Full moon ritual, certainly.
Rhythmic, yeah.
Or something with water. It's a good time for scrying. You can scry with water. It's a good time for moon bath. You can think of things that are associated with the moon, like jasmine as a scent, for example, is associated with the moon. It's like every full moon and every new moon, when I was doing it on a monthly basis, it would depend upon what was going on in my life and what I needed at the time. At this point, I'm just enjoying that there's full moons. I'm not doing that kind of, that's not my type of practice at the moment. But, yeah.
Well, and there's the whole drawing down the moon.
Yeah, we did a video on drawing down the moon, which was way cool. I got to do a video on songs because I want to share the moon song that I was given. So, all right. Adeline wants to know what type of witch I am. Well, I'm eclectic universalist. If I have to,
you can tell by your hair.
Yeah. Egan says I'm a green witch. Look at my hair. I don't use labels for the kind of witch I am. I'm whatever kind of witch I need to be in the moment, and that's pretty much covers it. If I need to defend myself, if I need to defend someone else, if I need to get some information, I mean, I'm just a witch. And this whole labeling, categorizing thing is new, and not useful, except maybe in the beginning when you're like exploring something, like if you're doing mostly tarot and scrying and stuff like that, or if you're into astrology, or
Yeah, at some point labels always become a trap.
Yeah.
If you go far enough with it.
And then they limit you. And I hate labels. I mean, if you haven't figured that out. When I lived up in the Kispiox Valley, I was the, what do they call me? The lady of the valley. I was the healer. I was doing psychic healings there. And I discovered one day that apparently, because I was this amazing psychic healer, energetic healer, and stuff like that, dancing was out. And I said, really? So I went to the first dance I could find in public with everybody that I knew and danced the heck out of myself there. And, it's like, I'm sorry, you're not going to stick me in a box here. It's like we're multidimensional and multifaceted. And you can be authentic and yourself and still have different moods and different parts of things that you like and all other stuff. So Georgia wants to know if I've had any experiences energetically with twins. Is there something different about the energy, spiritual journey of twins compared to those who only have siblings? From what I understand, the energetic connection is intense, and there's lots of studies out there. I don't know any twins at this point, but the Greeks believed that the twins were like a single soul that were split into two bodies, and some cultures actually would kill one of the twins when they were born, believing that they couldn't both exist and be human, which is terrible. I don't believe that at all. But, there you go with stupid prejudices and ideas and beliefs that people get in their head, and then they act on them and do crazy things. But, just imagining, I mean, just thinking about the fact that they grew together in the same womb and were connected. Identical twins are going to be even more connected as far as, with their DNA being identical and everything else. But fraternal twins are also going to have that energetic connection from when they were there, and they spent all that time together, growing. So I would think that there would be some definite differences, but it's not like I have that much experience with them. So Violet says, male commanding thing in days of old. Yes. Jaleesa says, do you know of any protection, rituals, charms for pets? Well, I imagine you can do something attached to a collar. Bast is certainly like a protective deity for cats. Anubis would probably be a good deity for dogs, and there's probably other deities out there that would be protective of dogs. So look around, do some research, see what you think. Find something that, seems to make sense to you. Charge up an object, put it in a little thing that won't come off, and stick it on a collar so they can always find their way back. Or, whoops, I'm getting a spasm in my leg, damn it. Mindy says, I also do this when I'm having a bad day and want to raise my vibration. All right. Jaleesa says, thank you, Mindy, because Mindy said it was a good question. Violet says, I'm not invoking or evoking or doing low magic or anything. That is why I don't understand the demon on the phone. It wasn't anything I did. Well, I don't know. And the difference between low magic and high magic, again, is a label.
And we have to watch out. Demon, remember, is really a more specifically Christian word for a bad entity. In the Greek, it was Daemon, I believe, or Man. Anyway, it was just meant a active spirit, not a bad guy.
Okay, so Jason Pra says, to me, the reason people are still hung up on the negative stories about the Fae is the them or us mentality that seems so natural to most humankind. Yeah, that's probably a good point. But the fear of the unknown and then the inbred almost fear of the Fae that has been all the stories handed down through the centuries probably doesn't help. But yeah, we have a lot of work to do as a humanity. Jonathan says, well done, Siofra, leave demons alone. Yeah, well, that's what I do. Julia says, I'd love a song video. Yes, I'm going to do one, I promise. Violet says, honestly, when something that strange happens to me, I have no one to call, so I got you yesterday. Please forgive me. I will try not to overstep. Well, I understand, and I don't know for sure what you heard, because I wasn't there. I'm sure that there could have been some technical reason why, because your call was fading out or whatever, or it could have been you were having a clairaudient event, and it just happened to be during that time. And it's our interpretation of those things that decides for us whether they're positive or negative. And if you don't want to hear it, you don't want to hear it, and that's okay, because you have your own boundaries. You're allowed to have them. So Destiny says, speaking of the Fae, I want to start giving them offerings to show my appreciation. I feel like song music would be perfect for me to give. Do you have any suggestions for music or specific songs? Nope. I think they like music in general. They like birds, and birds make music. So they like things that are happy. Most of them do, anyway. Things that make you feel lighter and joyful, whatever they are. That's what they would respond to, I would assume. Dora Mifra says, yeah, I never liked labels. Ryder says, I didn't know about that jasmine, just ran to grab some jasmine oil I have in my candle making kit. Variety of scents I have not used yet, popping it in my oil burner. Cool. Adeline says, yeah, I get that at first. I wanted to be a green witch, but I really enjoy it all, so I'm kind of just doing it all. Yeah, like don't label yourself and then limit your abilities. Also, she adds, do you know if the Fae like to hang out or be in places like pools? I was swimming in Arizona in a resort by myself when it was dark and I heard faint laughing. Well, I mean, you can find them anywhere on the planet, even if people in the area don't know that they're there. So yeah, in the dark, by a pool, sounds like a cool place for a fairy to me. So Tam Miranda says, any spells for energy boost, confidence, perk up? Well, I think singing helps.
Yeah, if there's something specific like a interview or something, you can always do a candle magic type of thing for that. That type of thing.
Yeah, giving a good talking to yourself in the mirror, making a list of your wonderful qualities, things that you appreciate about yourself. Doing an appreciation circle with friends is an interesting experiment. I can tell you it can be very uncomfortable for people when they're not used to doing it. And that actually can work really well if you have some people you can do it with. And the rules are one person gets appreciated at a time, only one, and then you can switch places later. The person who's being appreciated is not allowed to say anything about what they're being appreciated for, or make comments to say, "Oh yeah, don't not really," or any self-deprecating kind of stuff. And then switch to another person, and you can only say the things you have positive appreciations that you have about the person, and they have to be true, not stuff you make up, but stuff that you actually feel about someone else. And it helps both the person who's doing the appreciation and the person who's being appreciated, because it sort of helps you to pull in that energy. So that's a good practice to do. And if you can't do it with someone else, you can do it to yourself in the mirror. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so Ryder says that Violet, if you ever want or need someone to call on or talk about a freaky experience, I can't promise I will understand, but I'll listen with most interest. That's very nice of you. Jonathan says, completely off topic, Ian, I love you, my man. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Adeline says, Tam, Miranda, pink candles are good for self-love. Desideratum says, at Marisol, this is for protection. Ring a bell or chime. You have it on your phone. Ring the bell and say, Hacus este bia valoi. It means depart, foul thing. Ask Siofra about dominion. Adeline says, wow, candles. I can't spell. Yeah. Well, no one can spell when they're trying to go fast. Violet says, ooh, very cool. Damon. One girl calls it divine intelligence, too. She is a demonolator and writes a lot of books. Marcus Phoenix. Hi, guys. Lovely to hear you. Both lots of love from London. Hi, Marcus from London. We have a couple of people from England today. Jonathan says, yes, Adeline, pink is the color self-love. Aphrodite taught me that. And rose quartz would be a good thing to add to that, because rose quartz is a good stone for self-love. And for energy, walk barefoot outside. Jason Pra says, at the risk of seeming like a teacher's pet, I just have to say that you are extremely wise, and I deeply value your wisdom and admire you for where you are in your life. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Both of us appreciate that. We're doing what we can to be authentic and real and tell you stuff that we actually know, instead of making a bunch of stuff up or reading it from a book and telling you about that. So I actually caught up again. You guys had me going there for a while. Yeah. I'm glad we have the energy we have here. And just being around the two of us is just a wonderful thing. We're actually, apparently, we were very prepared for this whole lockdown thing, because we've kind of been in that frame of mind for a while. It's difficult when you have people yelling at you. I'm hoping that the person that was on last week that was having the issues was got an opportunity to deal with them and talk to somebody and stuff. Violet says, I guess as I have awakened to the path for the last 7 years, I study every part of it without using it. I have quite the library now. Yeah, we've got quite the library too. And it's a funny thing. You can read all the books you want, but doing it is different. It's just the way it is.
But you have to decide what you're going to do first.
You got to decide what you're going to do. That's true. That's very, very true. it's interesting to see other people's experiences and stuff and try and, put them into some kind of a picture, perspective or whatever, to see what fits and what doesn't. I mean, I know on one level, we all live in our own universe. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because each one of us is the center of our own universe. And so when we're here, we're experiencing a little bit of one another's universes, and then we're gone, and then we're back in our own universe. So we're sort of like, floating around and connecting and asking and whatever. Violet says, how do you decide? There are so many to choose, I cannot decide. Ryder says, I love libraries, especially when they are quiet. Julia says, I only got about 4 witchcraft-related books, and I cherish them as living with parents. I never thought I'd have them at all. Are you still living with your parents, Julia? Jonathan says, what's your next project? Well, I'm going to finish Bridget. You mean magical project? Do I have a magical project in mind? At the moment, I don't think I have one. We just kind of keep going, and then as things come up, we do them. So yeah, people are always asking me what my plans are, and I'm like, I don't have any plans. If I feel like it, I'll go do some weeding. We have to get our roof fixed, obviously, but we're not going to do that this time. Someone else is going to do it for us, and there's going to be paperwork involved, etc. And but other than that, there's no real super projects, magically speaking. Julia says, yes, under 18 witch here. All right, Julia, congratulations. I knew I was a witch when I was about 4. So.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed access to anything like that till after I reached 18.
That's right, you went to the library and tried to get books out, and your mother took them back?
Yeah, she just took them away.
Yeah, she took them away and took them back. Because she was a fearful woman. Christian and schizophrenic and paranoid and delusional. Not a good combination. Man, really bad combination of things. Especially for a young, sensitive person who's growing up and having extraordinary experiences. And yeah, not fun. I'm so sorry.
Life.
I know, mine wasn't much better. My father did believe in telepathy. That was one of the things he did tell me. And he believed in the earth. He never went to church. My mother did the church stuff. So the writer says, at Julia Inspiring, Adeline says, I'm also living with my parents. It's hard. Julia says, my mother's learning and trying to support me. I'm very grateful. My mom was very supportive of me after I left home. She decided to take a class on witchcraft, and she took a Dianic class, which was not anything like the kind of craft I was doing at the time. It was rather hysterically funny. I appreciated her effort, but yeah, that was a funny thing. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and I made her go like, uh-oh, my daughter's still crazy. When I was telling her, we had that conversation about seeing through the eyelids and how I wasn't the only one, and there's this like pregnant pause.
I get that fairly often.
I know, and so do I. And so does a lot of other people. Yeah, so I'm still challenging the poor woman. I've been a challenge since I started. So Jonathan says, what about showing us how you make universal fluid condenser? Not interesting enough? No, it's just a lot of work, and we have to get all of our stuff together. That's what.
There's like 12 or 16 herbs or something that go into it.
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Put a gold tincture solution into it.
All kinds of things. We've got most of that stuff at this point, but it's just deciding to get out the giant pot, and we do one of those large canners, and we make it in a big canner. So we also have to buy alcohol, like vodka,
right,
and stuff in order to
preserve it. Yeah.
Right, to preserve it, and it's just we have to decide that we're just going to spend a couple of days just doing that. So we'll see. Violet says, it was not until my parents passed that I was able to find many long lost answers 7 years ago. Yep. Writer says, at Julia, that's wonderful. All the inspiring witches and wizards I have known have never been easy and mostly lonely a lot of the time. It's so important to be comfortable with being on your own, too. Absolutely. Violet says it was only in their gift of shelter I could even find my way. Ah, that's because that's how you got your place to live. Ryder says, I've never had it easy. Jason Pro says, yeah, my foster parents tried to scare me away from witchcraft. It seemed the fearful atmosphere in the home did invite some negative entities. What got me was they thought my interest in witchcraft caused that. And that's the thing. Self-fulfilling prophecies and
Yep,
confirmation.
Everything that happens is
Confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Confirmation bias. It's like if you think this is what's going to happen if you do this, and then that happens, you've confirmed the fact that there's a relationship between those two things, whether there is or not. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Julia said, thank you, Ryder. I'm doing my best to find my way. Dragonfly Moon says, good evening. Good evening. We're almost done. I'm sorry. Jonathan says, get out the giant pot in big letters. He really wants us to do the fluid condenser. Adeline says, I was in the car with my grandma and she thinks I'm Lutheran. And I said, is tonight a full moon? I hope not. I still have to commence my rituals. And she said, I'm waiting to see what she said. Oh, please tell me what she said.
You might point out that you can use a decoction of chamomile boiled down till it gets thickened a bit as a universal condenser.
Yeah, I think we have pointed that out several times.
Okay.
Okay, Adeline is not going to tell us what she said. We have to now wait. Witchcraft and Wicca were used when they didn't know how to describe things, but now we have science. Also her believing in a god. I have questions. Yeah. Well, actually, she's not correct about that. But yeah, okay. That's what she said then. Writer says, at Julia, then no one can ask any more from you. Thank you for doing your best. Desiderata says, would you like to do a magical jewelry making video? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just, charge stuff up and put it together. I guess we'll give it chamomile tea condenser, cool beans, Violet says. Apparently she hadn't heard that before. Okay, guys, you're getting me close to the an hour and a half mark. We've only got a couple minutes. So if you got any more burning questions, you better ask them now. And you can write me and ask me questions that way too. And that's fine. Or we'll just go. This stream has comforted so many past worries I've had. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome. It's good to make connections with people who have similar mindsets. And then you find out that you're not alone.
Well, especially when I was coming up, you couldn't even get a hold of anybody. I mean, I lived way out in the woods and got bussed into school and bussed back home, and that was all I ever saw.
Yep. Violet says, I was very chatty, thank you. You're welcome. And, yeah. I mean, we're all on our own paths, there's no doubt about it. And as you walk along your path and you're going up that mountain, whatever the heck it is, you get close to other people, just try not to throw rocks at them. That's what my philosophy is. Yeah, mostly everybody that comes on is pretty nice. Last week we had someone they had to get rid of, and it was very entertaining to watch him fail to get our attention as I blocked all of his comments after he tried to curse us to Satan and back or something. So, anyway. All right, guys. Been fun hanging out with you. Violet says, cool, Ian. Bust in and bust out. Whoops. I guess there's an arrow. There we go. All right. So, bye all.
Goodbye, everybody.
You guys are welcome. If we can help, we will. So, now he has a sonnet to write.